All right, so got down to a hard question, didn't we? And then I bummed out on y'all and told you I didn't have time to answer it. So let me get down here and we'll try to mess with it a little bit um, before we get too far down into this. Now I got to find. There we are. Okay. So got down to this. I want to spend a little time maybe on this morning. It's verse 23, right? Jesus says, whenever they persecute you in one city, flee to the next, for truly I say to you, you will not finish going through the cities of Israel until the Son of Man comes. Now it's pretty specific, right? And so how are we going to deal with that? And we have to ask ourselves a lot of questions in this verse. This is Jesus, right? This isn't somebody else talking. This is Jesus talking. So we need to take this seriously. We need to try to figure out what he was trying to tell them, what he was trying to communicate. And in order to do that, we really have to ask ourselves some questions, right? Now, a lot of people deal with this verse in a lot of different ways. People who think that premillennialists, people who believe in the rapture and think that Jesus is still yet to come, they say that kind of the premise of that's Jesus messed up. I mean, that's the basic premise of premillennialism is that Jesus messed up. He didn't get done what he was supposed to get done. He was rejected by his people, and so basically he just put off coming. He said, well, this didn't work out. I was rejected by my own people. And basically, I've just decided that I'm not going to come again until I decide to do that, and that might be 2,000 years or 3,000 years from now, and I'm going to come again and make everything right. And I'm going to set up my earthly kingdom, and I'm going to be a king, and I'm going to rule everything, and everything's going to be good. That's the idea of premillennialism in a nutshell. Is that right? Well, the Bible doesn't really say that. The Bible says that Jesus did exactly what he was supposed to do. Acts says he came according to the predetermined plan and foreknowledge of God. Jesus said it is finished on the cross. I've done it. Done what I'm supposed to do. This is how it's supposed to be. So Jesus really doesn't allude to the fact that I didn't get it done, Matter of fact, in John, they wanted to make him king. He had the opportunity. Could have done it, but he didn't. Said, that's not me. Told Pilate, my kingdom's from another realm. So that theory really doesn't fly in reality. So what does this mean? Well, some people say, this means that, basically you're never going to get the whole world told before I come again. That's what some people say this passage means. He says you're never really going to get through, not talking about that generation, but talking about like every generation, right? And that's something that premillennialists focus on, because if you remember right, Jesus said, many of you will not taste death until you see the kingdom of God. Well, premillennialists say he doesn't mean you like you standing in front of me. He means like this, the generation or the eon or the age won't pass away. That's how because you got to deal with these problems, but that really doesn't make sense either. So back to the verse. What does it mean? Well, I think he's talking about that generation. Why? Because one thing he says, you won't get through the cities of Israel. The cities of Israel are going to cease to exist as Israel in 71 AD. So the idea of this is a way continuing 2,000-year thing does not make sense. Now, when Israel was established as a nation again in 1948, everybody goes like, woo, there it is. That's the start of it. Israel's coming back. But you got to understand that in order to make their prophecy right, it's more than just Israel coming back. The temple has to come back, and the sacrifice has to come back, and the priesthood has to come back. Everything has to come back, not just to say Israel's a nation. It has to be Israel as a spiritual nation has to come back, not just a physical nation, in order for things to happen. Because of Daniel's prophecy, I don't want to do that this morning, but so that really doesn't make sense either. Israel, in Jesus's mindset and the people he was talking to, it meant physically Israel at that time, which is basically Judea. Jesus might have been talking about Galilee In this context, this limited commission, sending them out, I really think we're just talking about the area of Judea. Not really even talking about Galilee, not talking about Samaria. We're just talking about this area of Judea. Another thing is, it's very specific. He says, I say to you, not to a generation, not to mankind as a whole, not in an abstract. This is very specific. If I was to tell you something like this, you would understand exactly what I was saying. If I tell you, you are going to finish it or you will not finish it, that's a very specific context. So he's still talking to the 12, right? So this is very specific to me. So that brings us to the next question. What does it mean for the Son of Man to come? That's really the crux of this verse. What does it mean? Well, when I say Jesus coming to this crowd, to me and you, I think none of us in here would have a doubt about what I was talking about. I'd be talking about Jesus coming again, right? Coming the second time. That's what I would mean. Because that's what we expect. So when I read this verse through my eyes, and I say, until the Son of Man comes, I see the end of time. I think everybody here probably does. But we know that's not right, because that's not right. Because it wouldn't fit the verse, right? It doesn't fit the verse. Because we know the end of time didn't come. Jesus didn't come in the way I think Jesus is coming. He didn't come again in the life of these apostles. So that can't be the case. So when you look at the verse, we have to look at what it can't mean, okay? Don't look at this verse as to what it means. Look at it as to what it can't mean, and then let's try to figure out what it means, okay? So the first thing, it can't mean 2,000 or 3,000 years in the future. Would y'all agree with that? The verse just doesn't say that, right? I mean, I think we could all agree. To read this verse, I'm not looking at 2,000 years down the road, right? I mean, I think we can agree with that. So we're not talking about the second coming of Jesus, right? Do you think we're all safe on that? Do you think we're all good on that, right? So let's put that to the side. We're not talking about the second coming here, okay? It's not what we're talking about, okay? So let's put that to the side, because it can't be, can't work. So that's one thing. Let's put that to the side. The other thing is that if it can't mean the second coming of Jesus, then the Son of Man coming cannot mean in this context what I think it means, which is the second coming, right? So, since it can't mean that, we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean, right? We can't try to fit it into something that it doesn't say. So we have to ask ourselves, what does it really mean? And in order for me to explain that to you, you're going to have to open your Bible, because I could go to slides, we'd have to go a long ways. You need to go to Matthew 24. Actually, I can probably do that. Susie's back there working. Let me see if I can just come down to this real quick. This is a ways down, so hold on a minute. It should be here. Matthew 24. Almost there. Hold on a minute. Matthew chapter 24. Okay, we're going to get to this eventually, and it's going to make a lot more sense when I get there, so let me just go down through here. Okay, I want to go down. Number one, I want to go back a little bit. Okay. Now, this is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, okay? I'm going to explain that to you in a minute. Matthew 24, at this particular part of Matthew 24, we're talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. We're not talking about the end of the world, we're talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. That was the question beginning of Matthew 24. They looked down into 23. They looked down on the buildings. He said, all these things will be destroyed. And the question was, when will this take place? That was the beginning of this passage. So in 24:25, Jesus says, behold, I've told you in advance. If they say to you, he's in the wilderness, do not go out, or behold, he is in the inner room, do not believe them. For just as the lightning comes from the east and flashes even to the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. Now look at that word there. Look at that terminology. So will the what? Coming of the Son of Man. What do we just read in Matthew? We wrote the coming of the Son of Man, right? Son of Man comes, right? Same deal. Now, but this is about the destruction of Jerusalem. I know this is going to get very confusing. I'm going to try to go slow because my brain goes really fast. So here we are. This is preparation. Jerusalem's going to be destroyed. And what does he tell them? He says, it's going to come, right? It's going to come quickly. He said, just as the lightning comes where the corpse is, the vulture gather, but immediately after the tribulation of those days, which is the destruction of Jerusalem, okay, not the end of the world, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. What does that mean? Well, when you read that, you think, oh boy, that's the end. Well, it's not the end because this has already happened. This has already happened. All this that I'm reading to you right now has already happened. This is all about the destruction of Jerusalem. I'm going to show that to you. So this has all happened already. So in the Bible, when we talk about skies, celestial things happening, blood moon, stars falling from the sky, in Revelation, we talk about a third of the constellations being swept out of the sky. In the Bible, whenever we talk about heavenly things falling or happening, it's the fall of a nation. So when Jerusalem was destroyed in 71 AD, Judaism, as it was known, ceased to exist. This was the fall of Judaism. This is apocalyptic language. This was the fall of Judaism. The sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. I don't know what that is. Nobody knows what that is, but I know it happened. Okay, I know it happened. All the cities of the earth will mourn. This isn't the end of time because if it was the end of time, there would be no cities of the earth to mourn. Does this make any sense? You know, it says, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. Once again, Son of Man coming, right? This has already happened. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So when we read this language, we're like, what does it really mean? He will send forth his angels with a great trumpet. They will gather together his elect from the four winds and from the end of the sky to the other. I got to get past. Hold on a minute. I don't know where I'm at. Is that where I was? 32. I got stuff in the middle we're going to get to when we get to this, but four winds of the sky to the other. The reason this is in here is because I want you to see apocalyptic language. Isaiah 19, the Lord is riding on a swift cloud, is about to come to Egypt. The idols of the cloud will tremble at his presence, so the heart of the Egyptians will melt within them. Coming on clouds, stars falling, moon turning dark, that's all Old Testament stuff. It's all apocalyptic language. This stuff's already happened. It's happened a lot of times. It's symbolic. In Isaiah 19, this is about the destruction of Egypt. That happened a long, long time ago. And it said, the Lord is riding on a swift cloud about to come to Egypt. It already happened, you know. You didn't see God riding on a cloud. That's not what this means. Isaiah 13, stars of heaven and their constellations will not give forth the light. The sun will be dark and the rise of the moon will not send its light. Talking about the destruction of Babylon. Not talking, and this already happened too. You know, this is apocalyptic language. When you see this kind of language, it's descriptive of something that's going to happen. It doesn't literally mean that this is literally what's going to happen. This has happened before. Isaiah 14, you know, where we think about this Satan falling, but it's the same idea. Star falling, kingdom falling, stars, constellations, all that stuff means that. Ezekiel, I will cover the heavens and darken their stars, will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon will not give its light. This already happened. This was a prophecy that's already been fulfilled. Yet the sky never was dark. The moon never did give its light. Am I making any sense here? When you talk in constellations in the Bible, when you talk about moons turning to blood, stars not giving their light, things falling from the sky, you're talking about the fall of nations. That's how the Bible. That's the language of the Bible. That's how it was told in the Old Testament. So when you see that, don't look for that literally to happen. Is what I'm trying to tell you. It's not a literal thing. It's a figurative. It's symbolic. It's like saying it's raining cat and dogs. It's apocalyptic, you know. So when you see that stuff, don't literally look for that to happen, because that's not how it works. It's language. Now go to Matthew 32. I know I'm kind of rushing this a little. I shouldn't rush it. But I'm going to do this again in a few weeks.
Wasn't the sun darkened when the veil split and a great earthquake happened and the earth shook?
Mm-hmm.
The dead were resurrected.
Right.
I mean, all
Tombs were open.
that happened.
Yeah, it got dark. So it says, now learn the parable of the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender, puts forth its leaves, you know the summer is near. So you know too, when you see all these things, recognize that he is near, right at the door. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. This has already happened. Well, this isn't future. This is past. So all those things I just read you, that's already happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, my words will not pass away. This was the destruction of Jerusalem. This already happened. The reason we know that is because the other question at the end of Matthew 23 is the end of the age. And in Matthew 24:36, Jesus says, but the tense changes in 36. And 36 is, but of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone.
That's the end of time.
Right. And then it says, for the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. So there's two different contexts for the coming of the Son of Man in Matthew 24. One context is the coming of the Son of Man when Jerusalem is destroyed. The other is the coming of the Son of Man at the end of time. So the coming of the Son of Man can mean has two different contexts here. One coming of the Son of Man is the destruction of Jerusalem, the end of that age, the end of that era, the end of that time. The other coming of the Son of Man will be when the Son comes again at the second coming. So can there be two different things? So if we go back now, we go way back to where we were, which is almost at the very beginning, a very good place to start, as Julie Andrews says. Let's see. Yeah. Sure, it does, but it is a prediction. It's just one's a short-term prediction and one's a long-term prediction. Right, one's already happened. Well, that's how come you get that tense change in 24, when he changes the tense. The questions at the beginning of 24 were, right? In other words, at the end of at 23, Matthew 23 and 24, there was a question posed to Jesus. That's what started the whole context of Matthew 24.
Well, it's happened now, but it hadn't happened when he was telling them.
Right, it hadn't happened when he were telling them that. But if you look at the beginning, the questions that were asked in Matthew 23, it says, well, go to 24, let's see. In 24, verse 3, it says, he was sitting on the Mount of Olives. This is after they'd looked down on the temple. The disciples came to him privately. Tell us, when will all these things happen? In other words, when will Jerusalem be destroyed? Because the first question is, not one building's going to be left upon another. All this is going to be torn down. So the first question is, when's Jerusalem going to be destroyed, right? The second question is, what will be the sign of it? In other words, how are we going to know that Jerusalem's going to be destroyed? And the third question is the end of the age. So even though they took it, they thought, like you would think, they thought it's one thing, right? In other words, when Jerusalem's destroyed, Jesus is going to come again. It's all going to be done. That's going to be the end of it. That's going to be over. And they really thought that. They really, really believed Jesus was going to come back in their lifetime. So to them, it was almost like one question. It's like, when's the Jerusalem going to be destroyed? What's going to be the sign? What's going to be the end? But to Jesus, it was two questions, because Jerusalem's destruction and the end of time are two separate events, right? But the destruction of Jerusalem is the judgment of God. It's the judgment of Christ. When Jerusalem was destroyed, that was God's judgment upon them. That was a coming. You see, in the Old Testament, when God comes or the Lord comes, it's always judgment. The Lord's coming on a swift cloud to destroy Egypt. The Lord's coming to destroy Babylon. The Lord's coming to destroy a nation, to do something. So their thought was, when the Lord comes, it's always judgment. Judgment. We kind of think that too, probably a little bit wrongly. So when they're saying, I'm going to come and judge Israel, and Israel's going to be destroyed, Jerusalem's going to be destroyed, I'm coming to do it, you know. That was God's vengeance, the Lord's vengeance on Israel, on Judah. It wasn't man's vengeance. I mean, they used Rome to do it, but it wasn't man's vengeance. It was God's judgment. And Jesus wanted them to see that that's my judgment against you. In other words, that's me doing it. That's going to be my sign. But then the other question is the end of the age. And that's why in 36 it says, but of that day and hour no one knows. If you read up to 36, he's saying, pray you're not pregnant. Pray it's not on the Sabbath because the gates will be shut. Pray it's not in winter. You know, flee, get out of Jerusalem, get out because it's going to be destroyed. And we know historically that there were very few Christians killed in the destruction of Jerusalem. There were millions of Jews killed. There were very few Christians killed in the destruction of Jerusalem. Why? Because they left. They left. Jesus said, get out, leave. And they did. Whatever Jesus told them in that about the sign of the Son of Man, and you better get ready, and you better leave, and you better flee, that's exactly what they did. So they did that. But then in 36, Jesus says, but what at the end of the age? To him, that's two questions. That's another question. So in 36, he says, but of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the Son of Man, not even the angels in heaven. No one knows that time. So when you're explaining that to somebody, you have to understand that Jesus came twice. Jesus came once to judge Israel, to judge them and to destroy them. That's the judgment of God. And then Jesus is going to come a second time. And I don't take this wrong, but Jesus is coming a second time to resurrect. You know, I mean, I think when people say he's coming a second time to judge, you know, that's not really true. I mean, it is true, but when Jesus died on that cross and gave us an opportunity for heaven, he judged the world. I mean, he judged it. He convicted it. He judged it. He convicted it, and he said it when Jesus died on that cross. I mean, I know we're going to judgment, and I know the Bible says we're all going to stand before God, but the truth is that when Jesus died on that cross, he judged the world. We're either saved or we're lost. We're not going to argue it. You know what I'm saying? Anymore. I mean, it's a done deal. Jesus is coming. Why? Jesus is coming to take us home. You know? And so if you explain it to somebody, the best way I know to tell you, because it is confusing. And people want to put it all together, and people want to make it fit this grand scheme, but you just can't. Jesus was very specific. This is going to happen in your lifetime. Right. Well, you won't know. You know, read the rest of Matthew 24. What does he say? He says, just as in the days of Noah, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage, so will the day of the Son of Man be, right? You're not going to know. You know when Jesus is going to come again? When things are good.
2 Peter reiterates it.
Yeah. Jesus ain't coming again when things are bad. He would have came. I mean, it's been bad. It's been bad for thousands of years. It's been bad as bad can be. How bad do you want it? I mean, right? I mean, how bad do you want it? Think of World War II. How bad was it in World War II? Right? Millions of people were getting killed. Genocide was taking place. Evil people were in power. Right? I mean, it was I don't think it could have got much worse in history than World War II, do you? It was bad as bad can be. All over the world it was bad. And Jesus didn't come, right? I mean, that would have been a great time to come, right? You know, we sing that song in our book, Troublesome Times Are Here. Look when that was wrote, 1944, 45, right in the middle of World War II it was written. People were saying, it's bad. He's coming. Troublesome times are here, filling men's heart with fear, right? Freedom we all hold dear now is at stake, right? Humble your hearts to God, saved from the chastening rod, right? Seek the way pilgrims trod, right? Christians awake. They thought he was coming. Yeah. Well, they definitely wiped out Jesus, and they definitely wiped out Israel. In 71 AD, they sieged Israel. They cut off their food. They cut off their water. They starved them to death. They captured the city. They crucified so many people they ran out of wood. They were nailing them to the walls. They tore the temple down, pried the bricks of the temple wasn't mortared together, right? Temple was it was hewn stone on stone, no mortar in the temple. And but when they set the temple on fire, and the gold, the stuff of the temple melted in between the bricks because there was no mortar. So they took big bars and they pried all the temple bricks apart to get the gold and silver out of it. And Jesus said, not one stone will be left upon another, and it wasn't. Totally destroyed it, right? And Israel ceased to exist as a nation. Judah ceased to exist as a nation. The temple was torn down. The walls were gone. The temple was destroyed. Right? Wasn't many centuries after that. Few centuries after that, it became the Muslims took it over. You know, Muhammad, all those guys. Islam took it over. And then we had the Holy Wars, the Crusades, where the Catholic Christians went to defeat the Muslims, to take back the holy city, build it back, right? And that all failed. 4 crusades, basically. All that kind of failed. And now we have the Dome of the Rock, the Islamic temple, on top of where the temple sat in Jerusalem. And now we have, what do we have? Right? A mess, right? We have a mess. The easiest way I know to put it. We have a mess, right? That's not coming back. Just throwing that down on you. That's not coming back. That's a mess, right? So if you have to explain it to somebody, the best way I know to explain it is that we just don't know, right? He's going to come when he comes, you know?
Well, we know all that was talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, because it says Jerusalem, oh Jerusalem. And then he says, down in 24, then there will be a great tribulation, such as not occurred since the beginning until now, when Jerusalem is destroyed, nor will ever be. And then he goes to say, if those days hadn't been cut short, none of the Christians would have survived.
Right.
I mean, so we know that happened.
Right. So I guess, you know, and I hear it every day, and we all hear it, you know. It's so bad, God's going to come again, you know. You can see it. Well, I hear it almost every day because I work on a lot of trucks, and those guys do listen to a lot of radio, and they're polarized, you know. They're either so conservative, they're like here, or they're so liberal, they're here. There's no middle. There's no middle with the guys I deal with, and trust me, they come in and they're like, you know, it's coming, it's going to come, Jesus is coming, it's got so bad, look at this, look at this, look at this. And you know, Solomon said it best, didn't he? He says there's no new evil under the sun, right? Solomon in Ecclesiastes says there's no new evil under the sun. And I believe that, don't you? I mean, there's no evil that hasn't existed. At some point in our history, there's no new evil under the sun. Evil's evil. It's been here forever. It's going to be here till God comes again. So, you know, I always tell people, I said, Jesus is coming quickly for me, you know, because I'm getting old. And the day I breathe my last breath, Jesus is coming for me. You know what I mean? And I'm way more worried about that than I am him coming again to the earth, because my reality is I've lived more of my life than I got left, I guarantee you, you know? And my reality is Jesus is coming pretty soon for Rex. Now, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but Jesus come pretty soon for Rex, you know? And I think we should be worried more about that than the end, don't you? I do. I think we should be way more worried about me and you and about our lives and our relationship with Jesus than we should be about when Jesus comes again. I do. I think we're wasting time worrying about something we don't know. Something we just don't know. You know, do I believe it's going to happen? Yeah, the Bible says it. I believe it. Do I think it's going to happen in my lifetime? Honestly, not really. You know, I mean, I totally believe it could, but do I really believe it's going to happen in my lifetime? I really don't. I mean, I could be 100% wrong. I'm just telling you what I think. I don't believe it's going to happen in Rex's lifetime, you know? And if it does, fine, you know, but I don't expect it. I mean, I could win the lottery, but I don't play, so probably I'm not going to win. But maybe somebody will buy me a lottery ticket for a Christmas gift, and that will be the winning ticket. I don't know. You know, it could happen, right? I mean, it could happen. I mean, there's a lot of things could happen, but the reality is probably not. You know, probably not. So when you talk to people about it, I think you need to focus on the present. You know, I think people need to quit worrying so much about stuff that they can't affect. I mean, I can't change when Jesus comes again. I have no control over that. You know, I have no control over how a politician's going to vote in Washington either. You know, there's things in my life I can't control, and I think we need to focus on the things we can control. You know, our family, our people, our life, our church, our community, you know, and stop worrying so much about stuff that I'm never going to change. I mean, that's kind of my view of the world. And the older I get, that's more my view of the world. I'm just telling you. You know, I'm tired of worrying about stuff I can't change. So when we get to this part about the Son of Man, I think you need to understand that it's not, there's two different comings. And Jesus did come again, just like he said he was gonna, in their lifetime. And the kingdom was established in their lifetime. Not 2,000, 2,500 years down the road. The kingdom was established in their time. And we are in the kingdom because it was established in their time. I think that's just the reality of the Bible. You know, and are we looking for Jesus to come again? Absolutely. Absolutely. Are we expecting it? Yeah, we think it'll happen. I think there's not a Christian that's read the Bible that doesn't believe that Jesus is going to come again. But do we know when that's going to be? Absolutely not. Not even a clue. Not even a clue. It might be tomorrow, and it might be 10,000 years from now. I don't have a clue, right? But the truth of it and the reality of our life is that we're probably going to meet Jesus face to face before Jesus comes to the earth again. And maybe we better be worried about that more than worried about when he comes again, I think. Wouldn't you agree with that? I would agree with that. So when people start off on those tangents, you know, best thing I know to do is just say, hey, listen, I'm not that worried about it. How are you with Jesus today? You know? So anyway, out of time. Hope that helps a little bit. We'll move on next week. Hope that answers the question a little bit.